Well, folks, let's talk about some murdered cards. In other words, older cards that have in one way or another been surpassed by newer, often better versions from Alterac Valley. Now, these are not always going to be one-to-one comparisons. This isn't some big message about power creep. In fact, I think a lot of these changes are good for the game and just better iterations of older designs, but it's still interesting to see these side-by-side comparisons to see how cards and effects have essentially evolved over time. So, all that said, let's just jump into it here with what I think is the most egregious murder I've ever seen. I think these videos date back to like Frozen Throne, so we're looking at like 4+ years here of these videos. And I don't remember an example ever being this dramatic, because Rind Blackhand from way back in Black Rock Mountain was a 7-mana minion with a conditional battle cry that destroyed a legendary minion. You had to have a dragon, you spent 7 mana, and then you got this single target removal tool for legendaries. Now in Alterac Valley, we get Grim Totem Bounty Hunter that also destroys a legendary minion, but for only 3 mana with no condition. Now there's one other small distinction here between these two. Grim Totem can target only enemy legendary minions, whereas Blackhand can target anything. That's actually another upside, I would argue, for Grim Totem, because if you have a legendary minion on board and you wanted to play Blackhand, you'd have to target your own minion. It forces a target on the battle cry. If you're the only legendary on board, you can't tempo a Blackhand. You could tempo a Bounty Hunter if you needed to, just play a 3-drop. Even if you have your own legendary on board, that's no problem. Now, that's, of course, a pretty rare use case. There is one technical downside. You could argue that, like, Grim Totem can't activate your own legendary Death Rattle minions, but, of course, you're not spending 7 mana with Rind Blackhand to activate a Death Rattle effect of your own either. There are plenty of other ways to kill things off more efficiently with actual upside, so I'm definitely not going to count that against Grim Totem Bounty Hunter here. So all in all, just a far more efficient, non-conditional removal tool. And here's the thing, it's not even getting played. It's less than half the cost of Blackhand. Still not good enough. Decks just have game plans. I thought maybe Totem here would pop into like Druid, who needed some single target removal, but Druid just has win conditions they're playing towards. They don't need reactive little cards like this. So for now, Bounty Hunter is not getting played, and that makes it a good evolution because it's just way better version of a bad card. It's still not too strong. It's not like this is a crazy power creep that got too powerful or anything. Maybe we can make a 2-mana version of this card and see where it goes in the future. All right, so next up here, let's move over to the Frost Saber Matriarch and Knight of the Wild from the Grand Tournament. If you remember this card, 7 mana, 6/6. Whenever you summon a beast, reduce the cost of this card by 1. Important distinction, though, this guy had to be in hand when you summoned the beast. It is not a this game effect. So essentially, you had to keep it early and then summon a bunch of beasts, but then you got this like dead awkward card in hand that takes way too long to get out, so it doesn't feel worth it. Whereas on the other hand, with Frost Saber Matriarch, you can draw it at any given point in the game, and it's going to be discounted, often 0 mana. On top of that, Druid also got like a bunch of other ways to support this by having good beasts right now with aggro beast Druid, having ways to duplicate 0 mana cards or 2 or less mana cards with oracles and get like multiple matriarchs. The matriarch feeds into future matriarchs because it is a beast, unlike Knight of the Wild, which doesn't contribute to the next one. So all in all, like a lot of advancements. Now, of course, matriarch has slightly worse stats as a 4/5, but it's also got taunt, which is clearly a huge upside, and obviously you're going to be willing to sacrifice a few stat points here for all of the just crazy additional upside that this card provides, and that's why Matriarch is a good card, played, and Knight of the Wild will be forever forgotten as a card that nobody ever played that I can remember. All right, this one's pretty cool. This is like one of the most distinct examples of like an evolution of these cards. We've got Forbidden Ancient. You might remember this one from Old Gods. It was a 1/1 Druid minion, and it gained stats for all the remaining mana spent in a given turn, which, was theoretically this like curve filler. You could get a reasonably statted minion for whatever mana cost you wanted to spend. Whereas nowadays, we've got Ibis here, which clearly ups the ante as a legendary, also neutral card. And instead of just getting 1/1, you get awesome positive effects with Rush, Divine Shield, and Taunt, which are clearly amazing. Rush and Divine Shield taking great trades, for instance. And then you also get +2/+2 to make up for the sort of stat loss you achieve with these other keywords that are kind of stealing away from your stats. So all in all, you end up with a minion that is often going to be as large or sometimes even larger depending on how much mana you spend or how many keywords you roll, but then also with these crazy nice upsides. You get to take good trades, play a taunt that sometimes can just lock out games your opponent doesn't have single target removal, and then of course you also have 20 mana nowadays with druids, so you can go a lot further with Ibis. Although that reminds me, I need to play a 20 mana Forbidden Ancient as well. Maybe play 2 of those and an Ibis throughout the course of a game could be pretty fun. But all in all, it's just a really cool evolution. And guess what? Ibis is a totally healthy card. I think Ibis is really cool, completely fine, way more fun to play. So this is taking an old idea of this mana bonus upside and making it playable for a ton of people, making it a big core legendary for a set. I think that is a really good evolution of Forbidden Ancient. All right, so next up is Reconnaissance, and I've actually got 2 cards here that I think Reconnaissance sort of evolves over. First up is Stolen Steel from Rosticons, and we've also got Waxmancy from, I believe it was Galakron's Awakening mini set for Descent of Dragons. And these are both 2 mana, discover a thing. Now, the difference is Stolen Steel does not give you a discount. The thing you discover is full cost. So it's like this 2 mana tax to grab a pseudo random thing. Not very good because you're just paying too much in total for an average or sometimes non-synergistic weapon. That's just not going to work out well for your attack. Waxamancy, you do get the discount, which helps, but it's not from another class, which means often garbage neutral battlecry minions are going to be in the pool for Waxmancy. So between stuff that's like really synergistic or just low quality, Waxmancy results just aren't all that strong on average. Very rarely going to hit something nuts. And then with Reconnaissance, it shores up both of these cards' weaknesses because you get the discount, which is great. You also get a card from another class, and it's a specific keyword death rattle that often leads to some great results. And that's why Reconnaissance is actually seeing a lot of play. People are getting Grey Bows and Rattlegores when they need them for control matchups, and just really good, like Barovs for removal. So there are a ton of awesome death rattle results, and the consistency of this card's way higher, and it's not a net negative tempo because you're getting that discount that makes playing Reconnaissance free in essence. So across all 3 of those upsides, essentially, Reconnaissance is just a way better version of these 2 other cards. It'd be kind of fun to see those revisited where you get a weapon with a discount from another class and a battle cry from another class with a discount. Kind of the next steps for those. But for now, we'll take the death rattle because Reconnaissance is a pretty sweet card. All right, moving over here to Demon Hunter and Warlock with the Urzul Giant versus the Jumbo Imp. And this is a lot like Knight of the Wild and Frost Saber Matriarch, but the resulting minions here are identical. They're both 8/8 demons in this case. But Jumbo Imp had the same problem that Knight of the Wild has, where it has to be in hand. Thankfully, they did add specifying text to this card in the future to make that more indicated. But Urzul Giant is this game, so again, you can top deck it at 0 mana. Jumbo Imp has to be in hand the whole time. On top of that, Jumbo Imp has to be demons that die specifically. So this super synergistic aspect where you have to have a demon deck to support this. It has to be in hand early. That's a lot of checks on this card, and that's why it was not a particularly popular play. Urzul Giant, on the other hand, can be any friendly minion that dies. On top of that, Demon Hunter really supports this card a lot better, I would argue, than Warlock ever did, because you have rush minions in particular, and ways to summon a bunch of them, which really accelerates the discounts on Urzul Giant, and often allows you to kind of squeeze it out the turn you want to earlier because you're getting trades with rush minions right away, as opposed to summoning stuff, then waiting a turn for them to die, and then getting the discount. So it's both more immediate and faster overall, I would argue, despite its additional 3 mana cost. So yes, you're starting 3 mana higher, but Urzul Giant to me feels like it gets there way faster because of all these additional upsides, especially, of course, if you top deck it, where it's already got a bunch of discounts, and Jumbo Imp would still be the full 10 mana cost. So both from like a class fit standpoint and just like all the mechanics for how this card gets discounted, Urzul Giant is a much, much better version than Jumbo Imp. And again, I would argue, totally healthy change. I think this is just a solid design evolution over Jumbo Imp's failings and makes for a pretty compelling and still fair feeling card. All right, moving on here to Paladin, we've got Vitality Surge versus Flash of Light. And man, these cards actually just look really similar. Both 2 mana holy spells. The artworks are very reminiscent of one another from a color palette standpoint, kind of a yellow blast of energy and a blue background and an armored person. But Vitality Surge takes this to another level. Flashlight always healed 4, and it just drew you a random card. And I always liked this card, thought it was totally fine, right? Good cycle with a little bit of heal. Vitality Surge, on the other hand, is a tutor, which is an upside. You're getting a specific kind of card, so when you include this in a deck, you have a little bit more consistency or the ability to get something you want out of your deck. Often, by the way, this is designed and cards designed to support it. This expansion, that's going to be a big thing. A high-cost unit. You can pull an 8-drop out of your deck to make sure it's there for your Cavalry Horn or whatever other cards, which also means you're probably going to be healing more off of Vitality Surge if you build your deck to support this. Instead of healing 4, you might be healing 8 instead, so twice the healing, while also getting a card draw that is, you know, generally going to be better, again, if you build your deck to support it. So Vitality Surge, essentially, as a function of its design, allows you to be more specific, more controlled, and more consistent, while also increasing the total healing output of the card. Like, yes, if you just had a random deck, arguably Flash of Light could be better, but because of all these extra layers of specificity and control that Vitality Surge provides, in instances where you're running it, Vitality Surge is going to feel much better. And I think that's a good design direction to take, where we have more control and more influence, and we're more rewarded for building decks in specific sorts of ways. In a real world context, in a world where you're building decks, it's just a much better card, and a more fun one in a way too, on top of Flash of Light, because of all the upside and cool deck building things you can do to support it. All right, then I got one more card here. I frankly had like 3 or 4 more that were like sort of good examples of this, but for one reason or another, they weren't that compelling. So I'm going to finish off with Scrapsmith here, and how this compares to Phantom Militia. And this is kind of a fun comparison, right? Because they don't exactly look the same, but at the end result, they often are, because Scrapsmith is a 3-mana 2/4 taunt that gives you some 2/4 taunts in hand. So 3 total 2/4 taunts can be played off Scrapsmith. Phantom Militia, if you're at full mana, did the same thing, right? It's a 3-mana 2/4 taunt that could give you 2 more in hand if you played them immediately, or if you had 10 mana. If you were only at 3 mana, of course, this was just a 3-mana 2/4. 6 mana, it's just a couple 2/4s. You don't get to keep the stuff in hand with Echo. It goes away. So Scrapsmith, essentially same base card here, but you can play it at any time. It has this flexibility where I can get those 2/4s, like if I want at 10 mana, I can play all 3, just like with Phantom Militia, or I can play this early as a little speed bump and, you know, set up for later, save those taunts to kind of weave in over multiple turns, which does a couple things, just increase flexibility in general, but on top of that, plays for hand buffs. And I haven't played this card with hand buff stuff yet, but I'm really excited to, where you just build a bunch of minions in hand and start buffing them up and getting these crazy big taunts, something that wouldn't have been possible with Phantom Militia. So just, again, a really cool evolution of this design, giving you more control, more deck building opportunity. A great example of Phantom Militia was an okay card. It got played in Taunt Warrior Quest stuff back in the day, but I think Scrapsmith just takes it to the next level, gives you more influence, and that is a really good change. And there you go. I guess that's it for this video. I gotta say, I didn't really know this going in, but I think all of these are good changes. Like, I think these are good evolutions. They make all of the cards feel better to play. They make them competitive without feeling overpowered. I do not think these are examples of like destructive or scary power creep, just the game figuring itself out and making for more fun and more competitive designs. That's really cool. So what do you guys think about these cards? Are there other big examples that I missed that belong on a video like this one? Share all those thoughts and more in the comments below. Also, check the comments down there for the pinned comment. If you watch this soon enough, I'm doing a year in reviews video series, like favorite card, most hated card of the year, that sort of stuff. There's a link to a survey down there in the pinned comment and description. If you want to go check that out, if you get it done soon enough, you might have your answers featured, or certainly your data featured in those videos where I spotlight, you know, the year 2021 in Hearthstone. So check that out. Until then, though, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.